This is the Plan Commission meeting of the City of Stoughton. And it looks like we do have a quorum, so thank you everyone for being here again this evening. And the first item on for action would be approval of the minutes from May 9th. I would entertain a motion for the minutes.
I'll move to approve.
A motion by Caravello. Is there a second?
Second.
A second by Commissioner Bradford. Any discussion on the minutes?
I'll abstain, Mayor. I wasn't at that meeting.
Okay. All in favor of the minutes, say aye.
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 Any opposed? And one abstention. The minutes carry. The next item would be City Council Representative Report.
And at the May 10th council meeting, Ordinance 12 of 2022 and also Ordinance 13 of 2022 were passed, and that is it.
All right. Any questions from commissioners on the City Council report? Hearing none. Staff report.
Kind of an abbreviated status of current development listing is in your packet. I think the item that I wanted to highlight is actually not even on the list, but I wanted to report to the commission that last week, Thursday, Kettle Regional Planning Commission approved the Emmy Roth Urban Service Area Amendment. That'll go to DNR, so that was a nice step forward for that project. Also was going to mention that we have seen initial draft USA Amendment application materials for the area on the former Tigan land on the south end of Page Street, so we'll begin to start looking into that more going forward.
Any questions on the staff report?
Rodney, was there a timeline? You said sometime in June for Walmart to consider their re-landscaping or sprucing of that. Do they have a more firm timeline for that?
June is the last time we've heard.
Okay.
End of June, they were supposed to be working on it.
Okay, got it. Thanks.
All right, and a couple things I'll add. There was a ribbon cutting at Weeble World last week for their building, so that one is ready to go. And then I heard this morning that there will be a ribbon cutting at the sheriff's office, and I can, when I get the notice, I can send it out. If any, you guys are always welcome to attend them if your schedule allows. So I'm really interested to see how the sheriff's office turned out. All right, next item would be.
Mayor,
Yes, go ahead.
can we get a little update, because it's been on here for quite a while, on the Dollar Tree, what's going on?
Sure.
Yeah, their anticipated improvements or corrections are slated for this month as well. We just recently spoke to their design engineer, and they're slated for the last week of June to do the corrective stormwater management stuff, as well as some of the other on-site requirement improvements. So hopefully we'll see that wrapped up by the end of the month as well.
Great, thank you.
You're
And I believe they did some work on the dumpster area. Is that complete?
Yeah.
The dumpster enclosure has been completed.
Yeah.
So we're making progress, so that's a good thing. All right, anything else on the staff report? Next item is planned development concept plan for 51 West Development Lot number 6.
I'll just give a brief overview. The illustration on the screen actually shows Lot 6. You might recall this is part of the 51 West Development Concept Plan. The zoning that was attached to this accommodated for, I believe it was for the, my mind is escaping me, for 16 units at this site. They're actually requesting to have us reconsider that or consider changing that to allow for a series of twin homes or duplex homes on this site instead of the originally proposed layout for the multifamily on this site. Included in the commissioner's packet and the public packet is a conceptual layout that would be contemplated here. You'll see there's a series of 10 twin homes on the same site. There's rear parking as shown here, one access point off the southern Wild Goose Way, but that would be their kind of anticipated configuration as shown here. What they have before you tonight is really just a concept. The packet contains a number of things that They would include in their application, if you will, for consideration, a conceptual layout for the elevations of the building, the site layout, just conceptually how the buildings would be positioned on the lot. And as you read the narrative, there was a number of components in here that they highlighted, the anticipated changes or compliances, if you will, that would be appropriate here. Different setbacks that they would require as a result of this. Primarily, the major change is related to the overall density. The TR6 density that this would assimilate actually allows for 6 units per acre. Our staff review letter showed it as being about 12 acres as proposed, or 12 units per acre, but in reality, we miscalculated that, and it's closer to about 8 as proposed, just under 8, 7.85 units per acre on this 2.5 acre site is what would be proposed as shown here. Those, that's the primary consideration. They show how the setbacks would be met, included in your packet. And I apologize, I'm running from a small screen here, so I'm not accustomed to doing this very well. We did include the entire approved package from before that shows, now I've really done it. I got 2 screens here. Just one second. Struggling. There's a reason I work from my office more often. So in the packet is actually the GDP as it was approved originally for the overall development. The entire ordinance is contained just for your reference. But the conceptual plan is laid out. We've provided a staff review letter that highlighted the compliances, if you will, and changes that would be necessary related to that. Obviously, we'd be having we'd have 6, or actually we'd have more units on the site. Originally, it was going to be 4 buildings on the site. This would have 10. And then in addition, the overall density are the 2 primary adjustments that would be needed in order to accommodate the proposed layout. The landscape surface ratio hasn't been calculated, at least that I'm aware of. The TR6 requires a 50% landscape ratio, which essentially means you need to have 50% that's not impervious. Roofs, paved surfaces, and the like can only accommodate 50% of the site. So that would have to be calculated and observed as part of the planning review process once this would move forward. There's a representative from the applicant. Is there anything you'd like to add?
Good evening. My name is Chuck Elliott, and I represent David West, who was in California at this time. We sent out the project proposal on May 16th of this year. I do have the engineers with us if you have questions like the percent of impervious area, things like that. And I do believe that we cover all the criteria. One of the main things we want to do is have a saleable project, bring more people into the area. We want to appeal to the younger generation, help with the schools and things like that. So a duplex is a lot more, I guess, sellable and livable type of unit. You have 3 exterior walls. You can always get ventilation whether you have air conditioning or not. Of course, it'll be air conditioned. We're about 1,344 square feet. We also have the possibility to add another 520 square feet in the lower level, which would be another bedroom. It's already going to be engineered for that and set up. A great room and a bathroom, so a rec room, whatever you want to call it. If you have any questions about the technicalities, we have the engineers here. Also, if you have any questions on the research as far as what we've done for reselling these after we build them, the project, I have Fred here from that end of it. So are there any questions?
Alderperson Schumacher.
I'm curious in this design why from the previous 4 quadplex design, it had 2 ingress egress areas on here and why this one would only have one to serve more buildings? And why that driveway stub is not extended through to Oak Opening Drive, as it was in the original plan?
Pardon me? Yeah, we wanted to break away from the commercial lots. So on the east end of the property, we're going to raise that up probably 4 to 5 feet and then put some trees and shrubbery in there so we can buffer from the noise. We figure that's a pretty busy street, so we come off of the street to the south.
Although I get that from an aesthetics point of view, it concerns me that you're gonna add that many more buildings into that area and have only a single ingress egress to that. And what the, if fire trucks needed to get into that space, what their turnaround ratio would be, radius, I mean, would be in there, and whether that could accommodate that. I guess I would like to hear what the fire chief would have to say about a single ingress egress, and whether they would be able to get their trucks in and out of such an arrangement.
All right, I do have Bruce from Denofrio-Kodke here, and I think we've addressed them with the width of the streets and the size of the streets. And we do have a separation of 32 feet between the buildings. So we're way over that. The north side will also be somewhat bermed because that is more of a commercial lot too. So above the units, let's see, what would that be, 11, 12, and on up to 20. But our main entrance would still be off the south, which would be Wild Goose.
Any follow-up questions?
Again, I would just like to hear the fire chief's take on whether he thinks that that is sufficient to be able to get any of the larger fire trucks in and out of.
Okay. Any other questions or comments from commissioners?
Yeah, just a process question, if you will, Mayor. This is a concept plan, correct? So at what point because this is not the first time it's come up about fire truck access.
Yep.
You know, at what point does this fire department get a chop on these?
Yeah, they get the packet of materials, but they specifically get asked for inquiries once they move past this stage. Again,
Past the concept.
Yeah, past the
They don't
concept.
see it at the concept.
They see it here, but they
They just-
oftentimes don't
okay.
provide formal comments at this level. So
Gotcha, okay.
we'll certainly seek it before the next step. Process is a good thing to talk about. This is just a discussion. This is not providing them, it's providing them guidance about their application if they submit, things that they might want to address further. The next step would be for them to formally apply for the rezoning to the GDP, to amend the GDP. And if that was approved by Plan Commission and Council, then they'd have to submit the SIP, the specific implementation plan, that would come back before the Plan Commission for, final consideration.
Right, sure, okay.
So I think, to summarize it, what they're here tonight is to introduce the concept and then get the type of feedback that Alderperson Schumacher provided now versus later, because now they can still make adjustments as needed, as recommended by either the commissioners or by city staff, and then come back with a plan that hopefully is approvable. I think that's kind of how we roll.
Sure.
Are there any other concerns or questions that the commissioners have at this time?
Yeah, I just want to agree with Brett. Seems kind of even less so the emergency vehicle access, that there's greater density, but there's less access point. Seems like you would want to keep that access point onto Oak Opening Drive if at all possible.
The on-site parking is in the driveways. We have 2 in the garage and 2 in front of the garage, and plenty of room for that, so the road area is always open. There is no other on-site. We have 4 parking stalls per unit at the site without interfering with the road right-of-ways or the entry into the project.
At a staff level, what we'll end up doing if they move forward, there's other things they'd have to take into consideration. You're talking about mounding and berming. Certain areas within easements, we can't have that occurring, so we'd have that deeper discussion about where you can and can't. On north property line, you might not be able to do it right up to the property line, but you've got a fair buffer area that might accommodate that. And I think your engineers will look into the oil and grease on-site requirements.
And we understand that,
Sure.
that, you know, you need a certain curb area and sidewalk and area like that. So it would be on our property is where we,
It does look like you're trying to provide a pedestrian route on the back side of, well, the front side of the back units, if you will, that would run east-west into the park area to the
right,
west.
we're gonna run that to the park. And the same thing, the front one will be there, but.
Correct.
And your comments will be appreciated because, you know, it's a new site. And if we have to do anything different with water or sewer into it, now's the time to do it. So we don't have to tear it up and redo it or adjust anything in the streets.
It's our understanding that your intention is to condo it at some point in the future.
That is true. It will be a condo association all in itself.
So if you're planning to do that, you'd have to work closely with the utilities about the on-site utility requirements for that.
Right.
And I guess my question would be is, give us an idea what your timetable is?
Well, we'd like to start late fall if Mr. DeVore gets that far along. I mean, we all know that things aren't moving quite as fast as they used to after the COVID and things like that. So it's tough getting people, supplies, materials to do the job. So the latest would be spring of next year.
Okay.
We'd like to dig.
Sure.
And then also, one of the big concerns too is the water that's coming from Rutland. I understand that there's some delays getting that, so that could impact us too as far as, you know, our start date. Until there's some water. My understanding is water coming from Stoughton and from Rutland to this site.
Yeah, there's a water main from the south that's connecting to Kettle Park West. So you're absolutely right, and the commissioners, some would know this, but as part of our development agreement, there's certain public improvements that have to be made and accepted by the city before we can issue permits on a site like this.
And we're aware of that, so
Yep.
we'd like to start in the latter part of the fall. But if it's spring, that would be okay. But we want to get going, whatever we got to do to get this project going forward.
Understood.
Okay. So, Alderperson Schumacher.
And I do appreciate in your design, your pedestrian path across the north edge of that to connect the parkway in with the main streets in there. So that is nice.
All right. Thank you.
All right, thank you. Any other questions or comments? I guess what I'm hearing is that they'd like at least staff to work with fire chief and see what their thoughts are, if they have any concerns about the plan, and then provide that feedback to the developers here. So this was not an action item for tonight, so we'll move on to the next one. And that would be plan development, general development plan extension for lots 3, 4, 5, 7, and outlet 1 at Kettle Park West. We do have this notice for a public hearing, but before we go into that, we'll provide a little background information on this proposal.
Sure. So our general development planning zoning requirements allow for, or require essentially full build-out within 5 years of that approval. As stated in the applicant's materials, the market hasn't been exactly as envisioned. COVID hit and some other things, but nonetheless, they're seeking an extension of an additional 5 years for the lots mentioned. There is one suggested staff consideration that we put in the draft resolution. It's found on the bottom of the resolution. It has to do with having an additional review process related to drive-throughs for Lot 7. Lot 7 of this complex is where Popeyes was most recently approved. We have Dunkin' Donuts. So there's other building pads on that Lot 7, if you will, that would still come before the Plan Commission. But I think the environment has heightened our awareness to really evaluate drive-throughs carefully. especially when you've got a site that's going to have multiple or potentially several on the same lot. So that's a staff recommendation that's been added to the resolution. But generally, as drafted, the resolution supports extension for 5 years with that additional condition. So that, in a nutshell, is the crux of the application. A gentleman here from Kettle Park West is more than happy to talk to you about the application if you'd like to hear a little bit more from their perspective.
Yeah. Hello, nice to meet you all. I would just say that's not a surprise. We've talked about that already. And as far as the market conditions he's talking about, things just absorb a little bit slower after COVID. There's definitely 2020 where we didn't see any activity. Last year was a busy year again, which is good. 5 years, it should be plenty of time. I wouldn't expect us to be back here in 5 years for it. We think we would move through it faster than that. But drive-throughs are an important thing. It's good to see that that's only for Lot 7 would be the conditional use. Obviously, we would like it to remain a permitted use where through good site design, we can make sure we're accommodating it. But we understand that's a good middle ground if that's where we come to, that it would be a conditional use for just Lot 7. And one thing, if it weren't to be a conditional use, and maybe I'm understanding this wrong, but drive-through standards are being updated within the community. So just through those, that might be a way to address that if it wasn't a conditional use and remained a permitted. But that's really the one area of topic that we've had for this is around drive-throughs on that one particular lot. So if you have any comments from there.
All right, Alderperson Schumacher.
I have one. I can't remember when we saw the concept plan for the Popeyes facility, was their drive-through plan was it the kind of single lane style, or was it the double
It's double
McDonald's?
lane.
Was the double lane? Okay.
Yeah,
thank
yeah,
you.
and that's another thing. With Dunkin's is popular, and if 2 years ago, 3 years ago, would we have done that differently? Probably. Would it have been 2 lanes? So we're and they've added a pullover lane, and that's trying to help. But adding 2 lanes, even lots 7.3 and 7.5. Really, 7.5 is the only one. That's the corner one that might be able to accommodate a drive-through still. But having a double drive-through there might solve the issue. But yeah, Popeyes is 2 lanes, so you'd think that would help if whatever future use would be on lot 7.5.
Yeah, we'd have never foreseen that, business model would change as drastically as it has over
Right.
the last few years. So, okay, thanks for
Yeah,
refreshing
yeah.
my memory on that.
Yep.
All right, any other initial questions before we go into the public hearing? Seeing none, we'll close our regular business and reopen the public hearing. And I don't believe we had anyone signed up, did we?
No.
Nope. Anybody here wish to speak? Seeing none, we'll close the public hearing and reopen for our regular business. Are there any questions or comments before we look for a recommendation for the city council? Hearing none, I guess I would entertain a motion at this point. I think is there a resolution in here?
There is a resolution.
Yeah,
Not numbered, but I'll make the motion to approve the 5-year extension.
all right, is there a second?
I'll second.
Second by Bradford.
Can I just confirm that you meant the resolution as indicated, or in the packet
As
with
presented here.
with
yeah.
the drive-through
With the
consideration?
drive-through
Yes.
consideration, yes.
Okay, perfect. All right, any other clarifications or discussion? Seeing none, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
And any opposed? None opposed, that motion carries. All right, and number 7 is plan development, general development plan amendment for lots within Block 1 and Block 2 of the Meadows at Kettle Park West. And this one also has a need to a public hearing. Any background information?
I'll give just cursory overview. You'll recall this is primarily the single-family, small lot, detached, alley-loaded parcels when this was presented to the city a number of years ago, there was really a builder that I think they were utilizing to model the building site plans and the setbacks, and we worked through that. I think the application materials indicate, the change in that home builder and aligning themselves with someone else that has a different philosophy about it, and therefore the need to change the setbacks to accommodate the preferred building plans that they utilize in their menu of homes. There is someone from Kettle Park West that can speak to that more eloquently and more specifically. If we'd like to have that just prior to the public hearing, I think that would be appropriate.
Thanks again. Eloquently, maybe not, but maybe more specifically. What we're looking at is adjusting the setbacks. So in one location along the outlots, the homes would be slightly closer to the trail. Those are not along a public street. And then along that same set of alley homes, the driveway depth would be reduced from 25 to 22 feet, which would still accommodate a car. Even in the past, that would have still meant that the rear of the vehicle would have been in part of what's considered the alley. So it doesn't change kind of the relationship between how a car is parked within the private area versus the public area. The driveways get a little bit shorter. So we're still maintaining a parkable alley. Why do we have to do this? Based on we're working with Lennar, similar to in the other areas on site with the single family housing, and their home is deeper than Rodney had mentioned. A previous home builder had a different model for it, and based on the depth of home that they want, a couple things that came up of if we had to shorten it, what would that mean? It would mean shorter garage, less storage in the garage area, things that just make a home livable. That they think would be sacrificed if we had to reduce that in this area. The other piece to it is, and I don't build homes, so I don't know this quite as well, but there's scales of economy based on a certain width or length. You can use lumber more efficiently, and you'll be able to build a home more affordably. And in this time, finding affordable housing is really important. So that's the other piece of a reason for it. And then I guess another positive is just maintaining a consistent setback. The roadways will have a consistent setback, and then it'll be consistent setback along the outlot. So it's not like from one side of the street it'll look different than the other. And then another question that what would come to my mind is lot coverage and stormwater. This would still, based on the anticipated footprint, would still fall under that requirement for stormwater. And just one other thing I wanted to pass around, it is a concern being closer to the street. Can I share a couple photos? Is that okay?
Sure.
These are two examples that I just pulled together today as I was thinking about it, and when we were looking into how the front yard setback should be reduced. These are just two, and I don't think I have enough for everybody, but two examples. One in Fitchburg, one in Oregon. One is a Encore development, one is a Viridian. We worked with Encore on the Oregon one. But it shows what a 10-foot front yard setback looks like. We're going from 20 to 10, roughly taking into account. So I think it still creates a really nice experience. Not that we're, thank you. Not that we're crowding the front of that. So I just wanted to point that out. I maybe should have included that in the packet, but just as I thought about it more, that might be a helpful element. So I think that's all I have, unless there's any questions.
All right, were there any?
Am I understanding this correctly, that, did he say that the driveways are going to be shorter and therefore the vehicles would extend into the alleyways? Did I hear that right? Or am I misunderstanding?
So the alley, what's the right word for that? The back of the lot, not into the actual driving area of the alley, but what would be considered the public part of the alley. There's an easement on the side of the alley that even in a 25-foot driveway width, they were already in that zone. So it doesn't change in that sense. So drive alley will definitely be clear. I think that's the crux of what you're getting at. So it'll be no different than that situation. We still have a clear driveway.
Vehicle wouldn't be extended into the
No,
road.
no.
And there is no sidewalk in that area.
There is not, no.
Does that answer your question, Alderman Maskey?
It does.
Okay.
trying
And
to
does
find
anybody else have any questions before we go into the public hearing? I guess my question was going to be, but I think it's answered by the pictures, whether it would affect anything as far as landscaping around the places, trees or bushes. If a homeowner wanted to put something there, is there going to be adequate room in the front?
Yeah, there'd still be, at least 6 feet if it was a full 8-foot porch. 8-foot porch would be pretty deep. That's, from preliminary plans I've seen, that's not the case. That it would go the full 8 feet, so there'd still be around 10 feet in that front yard. And then they'd still need to meet all landscape requirements as outlined in the GDP and then the covenants as well.
Okay. Alderperson Schumacher.
And then with the reduction in kind of their overall grass space that they would have in there, does that product then seem marketable, desirable for those who are considering buying it? I mean, you have your porch there. It's a big difference if you're 6 feet from something than if you're 12 feet from something.
Yeah, we've shared this with them. They still believe it's marketable that way. I think one thing that helps is that this is also located on the trail. So just from a scale of the area it's next to a kind of a smaller pedestrian zone. So kind of justifies reducing the scale, the proximity there. So they weren't concerned about that distance being shortened to 6 feet. If it's the full porch, otherwise it'll be more around 12.
I guess the benefit would be less grass to cut and less driveway to shovel.
Yeah. And
Anyway.
I mean, one of the principles of this traditional neighborhood environment is pushing homes closer to the street, kind of try to activate the streetscape. So moving it closer can be a benefit of that.
I'm happy that these aren't on, I mean, there'll still be a fair amount of traffic in there, but I think about ones that they had built in Fitchburg on Sain Road.
Yeah.
And they've got a couple of those that are quite literally like 10 feet away from a fairly busy street.
Yeah.
And it always concerns me, like, we had somebody take out a porch on Main Street up here, just plow straight into it. What's to prevent that? There's not really much preventing you from
I
slamming
toured one of those several years ago, and I did not. Yeah, the proximity was a little bit close for how busy that was.
I see the
felt that.
turnover on those are pretty high
Oh, is
too,
it?
because I see them come up for sale like already. Anyway, but I'm happy that these will be a little bit lower traffic volume coming through than it was there. At least they reduced the speed limit there.
Yeah, that's true too.
That was it.
All right. Any other questions? So I guess my question is, I'm under the assumption then you're under contract with Lennar, or would that be the case?
Yeah, we're under contract for this. This is one of the items that we're working through, making sure that all the homes that they would be proposing can meet the setback requirements, and right now they don't. So resolving this issue is one of the steps forward.
Sure. And do they have a timetable where they'd like to get started?
As soon as possible. They would like to break ground on these this year if they can.
Okay.
With affordability, this is one of their top things. They want to find more affordable single family in the market, and the alley product is a way to do that.
Okay. As long as I'm asking, how about the rest of them that they've already closed on? Are they
Yeah.
anticipating starting them this year as well?
Yeah, definitely. If they haven't already pulled a building permit, and you're asking, so it makes me think they haven't, they should be soon. That's the word we keep getting.
Okay. I don't think they have they?
Not that I'm aware of.
Oh, okay. Well, that'd be great news, because certainly, there's a shortage, and people are excited about having some homes built in the area, so.
Definitely, and as far as you mentioned the excitement, they have, this would be their third community, but the one that has been the busiest as far as inquiries. So they're very excited to be in Stoughton. I think, just being in a new area, they are experiencing some of the growing pains of what it's like to be in the Madison area, but Stoughton they have been seeing a lot of positive feedback and people asking about when homes will be ready and stuff.
Should have started here first.
Well, I'll tell them that, right? Hindsight's 20/20, I guess, but.
Yeah, it is. All right, any questions before we go into the public hearing? Hearing none, we'll close our regular order of business, open for the public hearing. Once again, nobody was signed up, so we'll close that and then reopen for our business. We're looking for a recommendation to the city council on this one as well. Anything on the resolution?
I think we highlighted the conditions that are outlined in the ordinance. This happens to be an ordinance because it's a rezoning. No worries, but just letting you know that this is the one that would be a recommendation to council, and there'd be 2 readings at council. But I think the resolution as written depicts the application materials.
Okay, is that how you understood it? So would it get voted on the second time actually in July, Connor? Yeah.
This has to come back to plan commission in July?
No, it goes to 2 councils.
Oh, it does, okay.
It would be,
I didn't know that, but.
there's a first and second reading by the council.
Yeah, that's a requirement on our ordinances. So just so you're aware. All right, so I would entertain a motion for the recommendation on the ordinance. Nobody's gonna jump off the chair at once? Is that how this is gonna go?
I move we approve it.
There is a motion? Farrell, okay, in a second?
I'll second.
And a second by Caravello. All right, any discussion on this? Hearing none, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
And any opposed? None opposed, that motion carries. Thanks for being here, appreciate it. Nice seeing you in person. So this will be at council, what, 2 weeks from tomorrow?
Yes.
And then for the first reading, and then it'll be back at that second Tuesday in July, whatever that is.
For the next council.
Yes,
The 12th, I think.
12th. All right, sounds good. Next item is plan development, which is a specific implementation plan for the property at 1800 Williams Drive. And maybe you can just kind of do a high-level overview of the difference between the SIP and GDP.
Yeah, the general development plan establishes the framework of the zoning district as approved for this particular property. We've been dealing with these on other sites as well, but that establishes by ordinance the parameters for the setbacks and the specifics for the site. Once those have been established, the specific implementation plan is then submitted to be consistent with or taking those items into consideration, brought back to the Plan Commission as part of an action that's just done by the Plan Commission. So this step, this resolution is a Plan Commission resolution. Final action is taken by the Plan Commission for the SIP. There's members of the applicant's team here, but essentially the materials contained in your package show the site plan, elevation plans, and the proposed facility on the site. Certainly the commissioners will recall a lot of the discussion was also similar to the conversation as part of the GDP process, but more specifically the site plan here itemizes consistency with that. We did highlight as staff a couple of items that we think are noteworthy. One was the allowance of 102 parking stalls to accommodate the shift changeover. Normally the number of maximum parking stalls that would be allowed on a site based on the parameters that we were provided would have been in the 90, I think 96 was the number. Recognizing that there is some shift changeover, that certainly seems like a logical accommodation. to allow for the slightly few extra parking stalls on the campus. Obviously, the impervious area is calculated into their stormwater management plan. The other item that we wanted to highlight, well, there's three, the second of which is they have a trash compactor system on their site. We regulate more specifically trash enclosures. This is a self-contained unit. So we're taking some liberties and trying to itemize that and identify that with you as a review body. But it's the fact that it's not filled and emptied, open to the air, it seems like it's a different animal, if you will, other than an open bin dumpster where you might have trash flying around. So we think that there's a reason, or it seems like a reasonable accommodation to eliminate an enclosure around this compactor, if you will. One suggestion, at least by staff, that's not included in here would be trying to come up with maybe a color of the compactor that would be collaborative with the building scheme, as opposed to a stark contrasting color. Black against a white might not be the appropriate color. I don't know, but we were trying to just think about ways that it would fit in better to the aesthetics, and that might be one way to accommodate it. I will highlight, I have a typo in here. The last bullet here contained in the resolution, allow Glacier Moraine access drive to be 40 feet in width at the curb. It's actually needing an appropriately sized for 50 feet. It's in their application materials, and I think justifiably so related to the semi-traffic that's here. But that would be one correction we'd like to see in the adopted resolution language.
All right, any questions so far about kind of the process?
How's the trash compactor emptied once it's compacted?
Fair question, but I think they actually physically haul it off-site, don't you? It's an enclosed container?
Correct. The dumpster's there, it's a closed container, it's hauled off, a new one is placed into it.
Okay.
And then they take it to the appropriate recycling and trash location.
Copy that, thank you.
You said there are an extra 30 parking stalls?
Extra 6.
Oh, extra 6, okay.
I'm sorry. Alder Majewski. Yeah, 6 is the additional. 96 would be the maximum number generally accommodated for this site based on the statistics they provided, but they've justified in our minds the additional 6 based on the shift changeover.
Okay, I just, for some reason I heard 30 for some reason, but anyhow, all right, thank you.
You're welcome.
All right, any others? All right, didn't mean to interrupt you.
No, the applicants are represented tonight if you have questions from them or if they have anything they'd like to add.
Got one specific about the building, or part of the building, I guess. Your cold storage area that you're going to have within it. Is that do you run your operation in Celsius or do you run it in Fahrenheit?
Sure.
Speak up here, sir, when you care.
Sure.
If you run in Fahrenheit, it's going to be held about 38 to 40 degrees Fahrenheit.
Okay, and that's fine. And no colder stores, so no frozen storage?
No
below
frozen
32?
stores on this
Okay.
project, no.
I was just curious about the kind of the underlayment, the base material that's on that, for having that, so it'll be a cold in contact with the concrete floor, is that true?
Yes, correct. It's,
Okay.
we do these quite a bit. It'll be, fully envelopes. We do a comm check, we do the energy code and meet the building codes with regards to that. But yes, there would be foundation insulation, and then the walls are actually what they call IMP, or insulated metal panels, which has an insulation sprayed within it. So it's more or less a solid panel that creates that insulation barrier around the entire surface. And then obviously the roof is a built-up roofing system that has an insulation of approximately 7 inches.
Okay, I was just curious about, because you're not doing a less than 32 storage in there, that, usually I know they put a fairly big base layer of sand in there to stop that frost penetration into the ground.
Right. If we were doing a freezer, yes, we would have underfloor heating and insulation and other ways of mitigating that potential frost.
Yeah, because you get then mold built up underneath the foundation. Okay, thank you, that's all that I had.
No problem.
All right, any other questions or comments? Okay,
I can just highlight minor things, but we'll have just a couple of staff comments related to adjustments of existing hydrant heights because of some of the adjacent grades. We've got a street connection for the new water service, a newly sized water service, so we'll just have some staff administrative comments related to those items.
okay,
I think
Go
the
ahead.
extra parking stalls are a good idea, having worked at a paper factory where the shift changeover from one to the next was about 1,000 people. A few extra parking spaces helps.
I guess one question I had, you weren't planning on doing any parking on the road, were you?
No, and that's part of the reason we wanted a few extra spaces for that, because we don't want anybody parking on the road, given the concerns, obviously, in both the city and from a safety standpoint, so that was the reason for expanding that a little bit.
Sure, we've had some internal conversations about that. I don't know if we've made any decisions yet, but
Yeah, Glacier Marine Drive, generally we're hoping to sign that so it's not any overnight parking. We're trying to create an environment out there. Obviously, your employee parking isn't orientated to that area anyhow. Your access is off of Williams Drive for that type of environment. So I think you're accommodating it well here, but we may put a parking restriction on either Williams and or Glacier, but something along those lines.
We did make that turn, for the trucks, so we could have enough queuing space for those waiting to get in, because there will be a security arm they have to check in before they enter the main staging area.
Right.
But enough room that we could queue trucks on there, so they're not waiting on Glacier Marine.
Excellent.
yeah, I think the plowing in the winter has been one of the challenges out there, so we've kind of slowly but surely been reducing or eliminating sections of parking. And it doesn't sound like you're gonna need it, so I guess there'd be no reason to have it. It would probably cause more trouble than good for you guys as well as the other people in the park. So I think that's kind of the way we're leaning at this point.
Yeah, as you can appreciate, all of our site plans have to require on-site parking, meeting certain requirements anyhow. But even though they're met in many areas, sometimes there's people that find a need to park where it's more convenient sometimes. So we might control that.
On the boat, what you guys are going, and this is more operational for you guys. How many shifts do you plan on running? Is it 2, 3?
There, I'm not with Emmy Roth, but I understand it'll be 3.
Okay.
Mostly the third would be kind of a cleanup and getting ready for the next day with the majority of production going through the first 2 shifts.
Okay, that answers whether it would be 8-hour shifts or 10 hours then. So, thanks.
All right, any other final questions? Otherwise, I would entertain a motion for the resolution that's in your packet with the one type will be updated to, what was it, 50 feet?
Correct.
Yeah.
I'll make the
I so
motion.
move.
Well, let Tom,
All
I'll
right.
second.
Motion by Majewski, a second by Schumacher. All right, last chance for questions or comments. Hearing none, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
And any opposed? None opposed, that motion carries. Thanks for being here tonight. All right, we have future agenda items or anything?
One I kind of touched on earlier was the development that's anticipated along Acker Road and Taylor Lane. That'll start to progress through more revisions. Like I mentioned, we did receive draft urban service area amendment modifications for that area for us to start to look at. We have an internal meeting with our leadership, the affected leadership team members related to that in the coming week. So hopefully provide some additional information at the next meeting.
All right, anything from the commissioners?
Yeah, one
Go
more.
ahead.
In relation to one of the resolutions we had regarding the drive-through installations and that, will we start to see language at least sometime in the future about how to reword those?
We've been having initial conversations with the city attorney's office.
Okay.
We're trying to figure out how to migrate through that. we have them busy on a number of things, and that's one of them. So it's definitely on the radar, and we are having
Okay,
conversations
yeah,
related to
I
that.
didn't want that one to fall off the radar, so.
It's all good.
Yeah, they're also working on short-term rentals as well, aren't they?
We're gonna have a discussion about whether short-term rentals are, they're not just internal. We have to have a discussion whether we want to regulate them, if we do or don't, and what kind of processes we'd have to go through to undertake that. Right now, I think we can honestly say there's not a high demand for short-term rentals in the city. The commercial and multifamily districts, or the commercial districts, those already have lodging components permitted. So we're talking more about your 1 and 2 family districts, and I don't think there's an inventory of those on the market right now for short-term rentals. Not to say there aren't gonna be, but right now there doesn't seem to be too many.
Are these like your Airbnb, Vrbo type things,
Yeah.
or beyond that?
Yeah, more like what you're describing.
Okay.
All right, any requests from the commissioners for future agenda items? Sounds like we'll have plenty to do.
Plenty. Mm-hmm.
All right, I would entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Second?
Motion and a second by Majewski. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? None opposed, that motion carries. Thank you.